Welcome to my website, everybody, and this is my story. And this will tell you a little bit about why I do what I do. But my first sales job was with an industrial distributor, and they had a pretty interesting system because I had to work out in the warehouse for a week and then work inside sales jobs before they let me go outside. They told me it was going to be about 6 months to 12 months before I could get outside, but I had my heart set on getting out before that. So after 3 months, I actually was given a territory and I went out. After about 90 days of being out there selling, my numbers just sucked. I wasn't selling anything. So my manager rode around with me for the day, and as we were sitting at the bar having a beer at the end of the day talking about it, he said, "You know what, Mark?" He said, "Your clients really seem to like you, but I didn't see you ask for the order once. You got to start closing people to get business. You got to close. You got to close." That eternal sales truth just started working in my mind. So I started reading books. I read Tom Hopkins books. I started going to classes. I learned about the Columbo close. I learned about the reverse close. I learned about the assumptive close. And I started using these closes so well that I became the number one salesperson in the branch and soon the number one salesperson in the company. So, and I was in the money. So I started making more money than I ever had. And I got this high status because they started to look at me as the closer. But somewhere deep down inside, that really didn't feel right for me. That didn't really settle. I didn't feel aligned because I continued to do it because that's what I was being asked to do. But back in the deep parts of my mind was something like, "Hey, Mark, is everybody getting what they want here? Is everybody winning here?" And that nagging voice continued so much that I actually left sales and went back to teaching and coaching. So after 6 years of doing that, I left to be a travel writer, and I failed at that. So here I was looking for another job, and I knew I could sell, so I got myself another sales job. Because even though it didn't really feel aligned, I knew that I could be good at it. And again, here I was back in there, having success, closing, making money. And then one December evening in San Francisco, I met the most amazing woman, and I ended up marrying her. And so we were on our way to Puerto Vallarta for our honeymoon, and we were real excited to be hanging out by the pool. We had all inclusive. We were gonna just eat and drink and have a great time all week. And on the taxi from the airport to the hotel, the taxi driver offered up an opportunity. He said, "Hey, if you go to this sales pitch, they'll give you a bottle of tequila and $100, and all you got to do is listen to the sales pitch." I was like, $100 and a bottle of tequila? For sure. And I had heard about these kinds of sales, high pressure sales tactics before, but I figured, hey, I'm the closer. There's no way they can close me. So I convinced my wife. So on the first morning of our honeymoon, we didn't stay in our beds. We didn't stay around the pool. We went to have breakfast at this seaside resort, and we had this beautiful breakfast overlooking the ocean. They gave us a tour of the grounds with our guide Jose, and Jose got to know us a little bit, started asking us questions about who we are, what are we doing, all these kinds of things. And then ultimately he brought us into a room with no windows, and he sat us down. And that was when Jose came in. Now, I don't know what the Spanish word for closer is, but he was the closer, and he put a contract down in front of us, and he began to coerce, manipulate, push, embarrass. He started shaming me for taking their tequila and the money and not signing up. He started belittling me for not being able to make decisions, and he pushed and he pressured and he coerced and he worked on my wife too. And finally, after about 30 minutes of this, we looked at each other and we said, "You know what? We'll probably use this one of these days. Let's just sign this thing and run the credit card and get out of here." So we signed it, ran $6,000 on our brand new credit card, and we left with the tequila and the $100. So back at the pool that afternoon, even after a couple shots of that tequila, I couldn't shake this feeling. I felt shitty. I felt like I had been violated, and it suddenly hit me. I had been closed. The closer had been closed. That's right, they got me. And I couldn't shake that feeling all week. It started, we got home and we started getting mailers from the company that had sold us to us. And so that was a reminder every time. And ultimately it continued to just stick in my craw. And what that did was it made me not feel great about what I was doing in my job. And I lost my motivation and I had to find out something different because this closing thing wasn't working. And I kept nagging at my head was, do people feel like I felt in Puerto Vallarta when I leave the room? Is that how they feel? Is that how I'm making people feel? So just about that time, I happened to get a call from an old student who was excited about a new job they had gotten as a film critic at the New Yorker and wanted to thank me for giving them their start in writing. What a beautiful call to receive, one of those great teacher calls. And it made me start thinking, you know, I was a pretty good teacher. So how would I do sales as a teacher? And I started, what made me good as a teacher? Well, one, I asked great questions and I listened very intently to the answers. I was curious about those answers. I asked follow-up questions. I put my students' well-being first and foremost, and I told some good stories along the way. So ultimately, I've thought, well, maybe I can start working this into my sales. And I started talking to people. I started asking people questions. I started listening. I started finding out what they wanted. And things really changed. But you know, something really hadn't shifted yet. And ultimately, I started working with a coach because there was just something that was off for me. And ultimately, what I found out it was a deep-seated anger that I had, and I had been living from anger. So this coach helped me see this, helped me release it, and through this process, started talking about this concept of soul-centered living. And as I started to live more from my soul, I started to think about my sales process. What would soul-centered selling be like? What would that be like if we were looking to collaborate instead of compete? If we were looking to solve problems instead of sell products? And so I started digging down into that, and lo and behold, I started selling more. I started having greater confidence. I started having better relationships, and flash forward a few years, I'm at a new company. I'm on stage at our sales kickoff with one of my clients, and that client has asked, how did Mark sell this to you? And this client, who was a CEO, kind of laughed and he looked at the audience and said, Mark didn't sell this to me. He let me buy it. And that was like, ooh, this big aha from the audience. What did that mean? What did that mean? So people started coming up to me and asking me, what was I doing? And they wanted to learn more. So I started to look at sales, soul-centered selling as a process. And that was something that I wanted to pass on because people were excited about this. Because now that I had released this anger and even released the anger at the closer down there in Puerto Vallarta, I was open to a whole new way of being and a whole new way of selling. So from that experience comes soul-centered selling. And I'm so excited to have you here on the site to learn about what I do, whether it's my online course or it's workshops or it's in-person consulting. There's lots of ways that I can help people. And ultimately, that's it. I said it earlier in the site, my why is that I'm a teacher and a coach, and other people's success is my success. So I'm so excited that you spent some time listening to me tell my story, and I look forward to hearing yours sometime soon.